Welcome everyone, Christine here with a bit of a discussion about Total War Warhammer 2 versus Warhammer 3, and where Warhammer 3 is significantly better from my perspective than Warhammer 2, and also where Warhammer 3 is worse than Warhammer 2 given everything. So one of the problems that I do have with Warhammer 2, and one of the reasons why I've played Warhammer 3 far more than Warhammer 2, is the way difficulty is handled. So this is a campaign as Grimgor, is turn 7 of the campaign, is legendary very hard, and I'm being attacked by an army from Karakazul that is being led by a rank 2 lord, as well as having some rank 2 units. Now this is a battle I can win, though what it would require to win, that's a different discussion. But it does have quite a few quarrelers, artillery, dwarf warriors, miners with blasting charges. And it's led by a rune lord. Remember, this is turn 7. And there's already 11 more units that Khazad-dûr has over here in Karak-Azul. What he has done over here, being able to recruit 31 units in 7 turns, is quite absurd. And also the ranks that these units have. Like, these are fresh recruits, but they're basically half experience. Like, even like we're looking at some of these guys, like the lowest experience guys, they're still halfway there to get rank 1. By turn 20, they're silver rank. By turn 30, if they're not deserved, then there's a lot of passive AI behavior in a campaign, but by turn 30 we'd be looking at gold ranked units, and this is a minor AI faction, let alone a faction like Forgrim, which is even more ridiculous, or can be even more ridiculous in a campaign. Though certainly over here he hasn't recruited as many units as Khazad-dûr, probably because Khazad-dûr does start with more units, more recruitment options, but still there's something quite absurd. And keep in mind, dwarves are limited in their growth, and yet all of Forgrim's settlements are already tier 2 settlements. All of Khazad-dûr settlements are tier 2 settlements, though he does start with control over the entire province. So that's not really a great thing from my perspective, the way the difficulty is handled. Now sure, there are ways I can deal with it, like if I want to be a bit cheap, just recruit a second army, start recruiting nasty skulkers, start doing some research over here, and that would be about it, right? Draw this army, maybe even get the garrison involved if I so desire, end the turn, and he's likely going to fall into the ambush. The AI is not exactly stellar when you're thinking about Warhammer 2. The reason it seemed more challenging than Warhammer 3 is because of the ridiculous nonsense that came when it comes to unit experience. And keeping in mind that in Warhammer 2 you don't have your red skin line, your inspiring presence, giving your units inspiring presence. So you actually getting an army of veteran units, and keep in mind these guys have been in battles. Like pretty much all of them have been in battles at this point, one way or another. Dealing with Gorfang Rutgut over here that I did defeat, keeping in mind that particular aspect, as opposed to this army that has certainly not been in battle because Khazad-dûr is at war only with me. So what Creative Assembly did in Warhammer 3, they reduced a lot of this nonsense, and that is certainly greatly appreciated. Another issue that does exist in Warhammer 2 that doesn't happen in Warhammer 3 is the way diplomacy works. So diplomacy is certainly more limited. Like if I want a defensive alliance, or if I want to make any kind of agreement with a faction, it is far harder. For all the nonsense about AI aggression in Warhammer 3, it is generally worse to deal with diplomacy in Warhammer 2, far worse. I would say in general the campaign map, although the way the spacing between settlements is better, I would argue, but overall, like, the campaign maps or the dynamics of the campaign map are generally worse in Warhammer 2 than they are in Warhammer 3. And you'll certainly feel a significantly higher amount of frustration dealing with all these bullshit with all the bullshit AI benefits. And at one point, if you overcome that early game, one of the criticisms I've had with regards to Warhammer 3 is how like the main challenge comes in the early game. Once you get past that, you steamroll. In Warhammer 2, that's also the case. It's just a far steeper curve early on, and then it drops off. Or flattens. The curve does flatten past like turn 60 or so in a campaign. The performance, certainly, of the game in Warhammer 2, the way the game performs, is certainly much better in Warhammer 2 than Warhammer 3. That's one of the benefits that Warhammer 2 does have. A bunch of graphical effect changes, etc. The way corruption is handled in Warhammer 3 is arguably better than it is in Warhammer 2, because imagine if you're a race that needs to spread corruption, that is something of an issue in Warhammer 2 as opposed to Warhammer 3. Or if you want to remove corruption, again, that can be something of a problem in a campaign. In this case, the reason Grimgor has a corruption issue is because there's an undercity under one of my settlements. I believe it's Black Crag, if I'm not mistaken, that you do start with the Skaven undercity under one of your settlements. I could be wrong on that, but certainly issues over there to deal with. Or there's Skaven over here in the Eastern Badlands that are occupying these settlements, right? I mean, who do you think has control over these settlements over here? It's like, yeah, there's a Skaven clan that does control this territory. But AI is more passive. Now, the AI being more passive and gaining a lot of free ranks actually creates a lot of issues for you as the player, because it means even though the AI is doing zilch, they're going to throw highly experienced armies that you will then have to deal with during the course of your campaign, which doesn't create a great campaign experience, especially when, let's say, you have to attack walled settlement that does have a garrison in it as well. Though interestingly, Gelt over here has accomplished very, very, very little, though he did get a tier 2 capital as opposed to like what Forgrim is doing. Well, that is certainly a different situation in a campaign. Diplomacy, of course, Warsaw. There are mods. There is a region trading mod that you can use, like you can purchase things using mod that does improve that situation, but it is a far cry from the system that we do have available in Warhammer 3. My perspective on Warhammer 2 versus Warhammer 3, like, I've done combat videos. I think the flow of combat is better, the performance is better in Warhammer 2 on the campaign map, but like pretty much everything else, the quests, the faction potential, the balancing between you and the AI, especially on higher difficulties, certainly certainly works much better in Warhammer 3 than it does in Warhammer 2. But the combat is certainly one of those things I would much prefer from Warhammer 2 versus 3. Minus the melee benefits the AI gets, but like, let me just load up, let me just start a new campaign. And just to get an idea of how good the performance is of Warhammer 2, yeah, that was pretty fast, wasn't it? So, okay, loading up a campaign as our favorite green brute over here. So, legendary, very hard. Let's just go for it.
Black Crag.
That was less than a minute to start a new campaign. With a couple of mods, I grant you. So the mods are probably affecting the performance there in some way. But still, you can load up a campaign faster. And if we get into a battle over here, one of the things I want to point out in regards to the battles, like, you can auto-resolve it, and the casualties, like, this army over here does outnumber me, and the casualties wouldn't be incredible. But let's fight them manually. Less than 2 minutes, and I'm already in a battle, in a campaign. Wouldn't that be a wonderful experience to have in Warhammer 3? Like, from a practical standpoint, like, one of the reasons I hate fighting a lot of these pointless, meaningless battles in Warhammer 3 is, well, I know I'm gonna have to wait a long fucking time to actually get in those battles. Whereas in Warhammer 2, like, just the way the performance is handled in Warhammer 2 does certainly push you towards fighting more battles on a regular basis, because you know you're not gonna waste a significant amount of time, and let the battle begin. Ooh, that is a nasty impact. You know, that's how Grimgor should feel. Should feel as a legendary war. Now, to be fair, the AI is overall weaker in Warhammer 2 than it is in Warhammer 3, like the kind of tactics it's using. Though, to be fair, some, like, the fact that the AI in Warhammer 3 is constantly trying to dodge everything you're throwing away, like artillery, range units, all that, repositioning, etc., can actually end up hurting it more than it benefits. Like, some people are saying, like, in Warhammer 3, that's actually better to set the AI difficulty to normal, because the AI is actually going to handle itself better in battles than it would otherwise. So we got a wah very, very quickly. We got a charge. And oh, don't you just love to see it? Oh, yes, goblins flying everywhere. It is a marvelous sight, isn't it? Across the entire battlefield. Now, battles are certainly longer in Warhammer 3. I don't necessarily mind that as an idea. From a practical standpoint, that's a bit of a different discussion, but as an idea, not necessarily so much. Ooh, that is sweet, isn't it? There are no mods I'm using to affect battles like that. I just basically have things like Fog of War, the Diplomacy mod, all that. But nothing that would have any kind of impact on the state of battles. And this is going to be over very, very shortly. And that would be about it, wouldn't it? Now, units do still have that issue where when a unit routes, they won't follow as they should. But, like, the combat certainly felt far more impactful. Obviously, the balance is far different. I think it's something like a combination of, like, how the AI behaves, how individual units behave, how individual models behave within those units, and a question of, well, the behavior of mass between Warhammer 2 and 3. Okay, let's get a bit of replenishment. The enemy leader is gone. Get some movement range. And auto-resolve this one. Get more replenishment over there. So what do you all about the auto-resolve, Mer2? Like, looking at this auto-resolve, it's like, while I certainly will take damage, undeniably so, Okay, well, it does feel a heck of a lot better.
Your territory.
It does feel a heck of a lot better to not have to fight the Salmon Bal. That's because Salamans in Warhammer 2 don't have the same kind of auto-resolve benefit that they do in 3. I think it's a question of defensive supplies, but... or just the entire system over there. That... the entire system of Warhammer 2 Salmon Battles versus Warhammer 3, but you certainly have a situation where you don't have to fight a bunch of these minor settlement battles in a campaign. You will fight battles, make no mistake on that. You'll fight settlement battles even against garrisons, especially because of all the AI crap that happens in this game. But not quite as much as you would otherwise. The battles that you do fight feel better individually when you're not frustrated by the fact that the AI is just blatantly cheating against you. And now we get to deal with Gorfang Rutgut. Oh, I can certainly auto-resolve that. And even recover from it reasonably enough. Okay, let's sack it. The reason I'm sacking it is because I know what's gonna happen. There we go. We got the settlement. Not a problem. Quick enough. Like, just the dynamics of battles and auto-resolve, that does feel better. Everything else in terms of, like, the campaign feels worse. Like, if we could have a game that combines the battles of... if we could have a game that combines the battles... Hold on. That combines the battles of... Warhammer 2, or rather how the responsiveness feels in Warhammer 2, together with the campaign mechanics of Warhammer 3, I think that would actually be the better choice, the far better choice for a game. Just from my perspective. But that's where I stand. Let me know what you guys think about that situation. And what is your preferred option? Is it Warhammer 2? Is it Warhammer 3? I've spent over 3 times. I've spent over 3 times as much time in in Warhammer 3 than I have in Warhammer 2. And there's your army. Because of course... of course it would be there. Wouldn't it? And it's for the reason that you don't have the same level of bullshit that you do see here, right? On display. And, you know, people complain about how the AI is extremely aggressive and all that stuff. Well, it's not quite this level of nonsense, is it? Also, I do think that Creative Assembly was correct to... Well, that would end poorly, wouldn't it? Jeez Louise, what the fuck? It's like, sheesh. It's like 3 armies. I mean, 21. Hey, Jesus. Sometimes you look at AI in Warhammer 2 and it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Oh boy. Yeah, it does end up feeling ridiculous. Or the 2 stacks almost of Barak Var. Oh boy. Yeah, that's the reason. Now, you could argue, oh, just play on lower difficulty. Playing on lower difficulty is not exactly a great experience because you just end up steamrolling everything with your no challenge. You need to feel challenged as a player, I think, but not this. Not this. You want to know why Emmerich's campaign was misery? Because Mr. Snitch over here would just throw in a Dyson sphere your way, and like he would throw 4 damn stacks. I mean, he wouldn't be alone. Like the Greenskins here have an entire stack, 3 armies. Bloody hell. That is absolute madness, isn't it? Pussy signing out. Stay tuned for more.